Many are still grieving. Some families will be lost to one another forever. To those of you who face the difficulties of reconnecting with family and establishing ongoing relationships, we say sorry. We offer this apology in the hope that it will assist your healing and in order to shine a light on a dark period of our nation's history. To those who have fought for the truth to be heard, we hear you now.
You're listening to Adopt Perspective Podcast, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption. I'm your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland, Jo Sparrow. This podcast is a production of Jigsaw Queensland Post-Adoption Support Service. However, the views expressed are those of the people participating and not necessarily Jigsaw Queensland. The podcast discusses adult themes and listener discretion is advised. When people affected by adoption embark on the journey to explore their experience and perhaps find their birth relatives, the support network around them plays a crucial role in navigating this deeply emotional process. Family members, including partners, children, siblings, and extended relatives, and even friends, often experience a complex mix of emotions themselves. They may feel pride, anxiety, and sometimes insecurity as their loved ones search for their biological roots or begin to figure out just how adoption has impacted them. On top of this, they themselves are affected by adoption. For family members, part of their family tree is missing too. Their support can be invaluable to adoptees and mothers and fathers who have lost children to adoption, providing a stable emotional foundation and offering practical assistance such as research help or moral support. I've long wanted to record an episode featuring the perspectives of our support people. However, it has proven challenging to pull together. So I asked members of my own family if they'd be willing to share their experience. And as always, they agreed, despite not loving digging around in emotional stuff and being recorded in the process. My own procrastination in pulling together the interview spoke volumes to me about my own anxiety as to what adoption and my impact had been on them. We all got there in the end though, and I thank Baden and Sam for their participation in this episode. Let's hear it. Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, great.
That's good. Can you tell our listeners who you are and your relationship to me?
I'm your husband, darling.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you
What's
are.
your name?
Baden. My name's Baden. Baden Sparrow. Husband of Joanne Sparrow. Sorry, Dr. Joanne Sparrow.
Now, we've been together for 33 years and we started dating when we were 19, which is the same year that I searched for and met my mother. So you've really not ever known a version of me that wasn't engaged in some type of exploration of adoption. But unlike when I found my mother, you were quite involved when I searched for and met my father. Having already experienced 20 years of highs and lows of my reunion experience by the time that happened, how did you first react when you learned that I was kicking off a search for my father?
I would say I was a bit nervous about the whole thing. I had some feelings of, I guess I just didn't want to, I felt like I was inviting somebody else into my life that I didn't know. I knew a little bit about the guy's history, and I only heard sort of small snippets about his character and stuff like that, so I didn't know who I was inviting into my life. I didn't know a whole lot about the guy. So yeah, I was quite apprehensive about the whole thing, to be honest.
Yeah, I remember you being like that. I remember I don't completely go in as a silo into these things, so I do remember having conversations with you about it, and I do remember you being maybe a little bit reluctant, like not saying not to do it, but maybe saying, are you sure you want to do this, and just us having discussions about it. And then obviously I might have said things that made you get it more at ease with it, or maybe not, maybe you just gritted your teeth and went along.
Yes, I think I just like things to just flow along nicely, but as you know, they don't happen that way in the adoptive world, do they?
No, they don't. So were your fears warranted? How do you feel that search and reunion went with my father?
No, I think it went good. I had no expectations leading into it. Like I said, I didn't know him. I didn't know what to expect. But I think when you look at it, looking back, I think he's had overall a positive influence on you and the family and myself as well. And while, of course, being like an adopted relationship, it's far from perfect, but I think it's been good and well worth it.
Yeah, it was definitely well worth it. I'm glad that I did that search, and keep saying the word complex, but as complex as those relationships are, it's certainly one that I'm glad that I finished.
Me too.
So what emotions have you personally experienced while supporting me through my adoption experience?
I think I've experienced a range of emotions. I think there's been probably just mirroring yours. There's been times of sadness. There's been times of, happiness. There's been times of disappointment. There's been all kinds of emotions, really.
Yeah. So you've seen me fumbling about in my adoption experience at a lot of levels, like as a teenager. You saw me kind of wiped out by it as a new mother. You've seen me frustrated, grieving, and angry at times. You've travelled interstate with me to find graves buried in tall grass and weeds. And even my taking my explorations to the next level by completing a doctorate just to try and figure myself out and heal. And even now I work in the adoption space with Jigsaw. So in some ways we can't even escape adoption on any level. Some might say that as a husband and a support person, you've had a bit of a bumpy ride. I wonder, how has your relationship changed with me at all throughout these times, if it has?
I think the whole experience has just strengthened our relationship more than it's done anything. I don't think it's had any negative impact on our relationship as a whole, but I think every pitfall that you manage to scrape yourself through, you come out better at the end.
Yeah. I can think of times, we had a little discussion about this earlier, where our lives have been complicated while I've been doing things. So when I was doing my doctorate, for instance, I was working full time. We had young children. We had a son who'd been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and was going through a lot of challenges with that. We were working very hard, both of us. We had a business. So there was a lot of complexities in our life generally. And then I was exploring adoption, and in a big way. And I definitely felt strain in all areas of my life, including our relationship at that time. And it wasn't just because of adoption, but kind of because sometimes we're in the midst of exploring adoption while there's a lot going on just generally. Like,
no, you can't blame everything on adoption, can you?
No, you can't. But that's the thing, isn't it? Like, sometimes we're juggling the adoption stuff during our big lives, and you can't really just put it on the back burner sometimes, because when it's niggling, and when you decide to get into it, like, I can become quite obsessive. Mm-hmm. Would that be your experience of how I can be sometimes about it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to go into any great depth on how you can be.
Well, you can do that, and I invite you to do it, which is one of the reasons I want to interview you for it, because I'm giving you permission to say anything you want. So, you can be as honest and...
You say that now.
I say that now. I promise I won't hold it against you. In what ways do you think you've been able to provide the most meaningful support to me?
I think, as a husband, I think you can only be just be there for you, and just listen to the things you have to say. Just try and be a rock for you. It's difficult because there's things going on in our lives that lead us astray and so forth. But I think all I can be is supportive as I can be, and I realise I'm not an expert. I'm not a social worker. I'm not qualified in any way, so I don't try to be anything other than just a general support.
Yeah. And I have to say you've been really good at that, because one of the things I love about you is you've been supportive but not ever tried to direct me in any way. I think you kind of just innately realised that I needed to be in control of my own destiny, so to speak, when it comes to adoption, and some of the things that you've done have been just amazing without you not even realising. Like, you've just kind of been...
Thank you.
You've been a bit of my ride and die without, taking things over. And there's been plenty of times where you have helped me stay the course. Like when we were in Sydney, and we were looking at the home that, my mother lived in when I was conceived in, and where, 4 generations of my family had lived. And we were also visiting those grave sites and stuff. But when we were outside that house, I would have left there without having really gone deep into that experience, because I was so uncomfortable by it. And you actually made me stay there and asked me, well, I think you said something like, we came a really long way to be here. Let's not just leave straight away. And then that sort of started a conversation, and I was able to get a lot of grief out in that time. Okay. And so you did that. Like, I would have left before I'd got what I needed out of it, and I would have been upset with myself. And then when we were at the grave sites later that day, there was just a moment where we were at the gravesite of my grandmother and her parents. And I sort of looked around, and you were behind me cleaning up the gravesite, like some tiles had slipped down probably in the rain and stuff. And you were just cleaning up, and as invested as I was. And that meant a great deal to me, just having you there and being invested in meeting my family at grave sites. And also when we went looking for like my great-great-grandparents' site, which was like buried way at the back of this huge Rookwood cemetery. You remember that?
That was a difficult one to find, that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we were at
felt like putting a set of snake gaiters on to find that one.
And we were like at the tail end of our time that we had there before we had to go and meet somebody. So I was like, oh, just forget it. It doesn't matter. I saw the other ones. And you're like, come on, no. Like, let's go.
No, it became a challenge, really. And like I said to you before, I've spent so much time listening to everything you've said about these people. They've become my family too. So I had an invested interest in finding them, not just for you, but also for myself and for the boys as well. Yeah. Being our 2 sons. Yeah.
You're making me teary. That means a lot to me.
So emotional.
So have you ever sought any support or advice from others who have been through similar experiences?
No, I don't feel the whole thing's had that kind of a detrimental effect on my own sort of mental state. But, if other people feel that way and they feel they need to seek advice of others, then by all means, do it.
Yeah. I just wondered, like, I've spoken to our boys a lot about my experience over the years. Have they ever spoken to you about it?
No, I think they get all the information they need about that and, that side of the family from you, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the guy they come to talk about soccer and sports and go fishing and play golf with.
I handle all the hard stuff.
You handle the hard stuff, do you?
And like we were just talking about this before too, like I don't know if you're aware of this, but the entire reason I did that doctorate work, it was because like there were chapters missing from my life that I felt, had I known, might have helped me understand myself and why I react to the world the way that I do. And because those chapters are missing, it's taken 50-something years to start to really get a handle on that. And I feel almost certain that my experiences have impacted me as a mother and how I've mothered my children. And if there's any hangover from that, if there's anything they've got to deal with, I kind of wanted to figure that out and put it down in writing. So if they ever deal with it, I've almost given them a handbook to who their mother is.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was really important for me to leave to them. And I'll ask Sam about that later.
Sam's the one to ask.
He hasn't read any of it, but anyway. What do you hope the long-term outcome of all of my explorations and searches and reunions are going to be for our family as a whole, in the long run?
I think there's been big change over the last 10 years, just in, your own demeanour and just your own sort of sense of, happiness and peace, I guess. And I just would like to see that continue for us and, for the whole family.
Yeah. If I had to say it in one word, it would be peace. And
Peace,
at times I do feel peace now.
Yeah, I think that just comes through, that peace comes through just a greater understanding of everything that's sort of transpired in the past and learning to deal with it in the future moving forward.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if you have any advice that you would give to others who are in a similar position of supporting a loved one through their adoption explorations and searches and reunions?
Definitely have to be patient. Definitely have to listen. Just definitely have to be as supportive as you can be, but just don't try and do things that you're not comfortable with. Don't try and counsel. Just don't go above your pay grade is about the only piece of advice that I would give people.
That's good advice. Can I just ask how your understanding of adoption has evolved as a result of witnessing my search and reunions? Because we were 19 when you first, heard about me being adopted, just kids. And you're 52 now. 53,
okay.
Sorry. I was giving you the leeway of 1 year.
Yeah, don't take another year off me. They're precious now.
So how has your understanding of adoption evolved since then?
Certainly a lot different than when I was 19 years old. I think I was extremely naive at 19 years old about what it all meant and the long-lasting sort of trauma and effects that it can have on people. I had absolutely zero understanding of it, and I certainly, while it's improved, I wouldn't say I don't think anybody's got a full understanding of it, no matter what your experiences have been. But I do my best. But yeah, I certainly learned a lot, and I think I've learned that it's a it's not all. It's no fairy tale, that's for sure. It's not adopt a child and live happily ever after. It's far from that. And if you think it's going to be any different, then you're probably going to be mistaken.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and to our listeners, because I know it's not your favorite thing to do, and I really appreciate it.
Talking about emotions and what I feel is not my thing.
Yeah, you are the stereotypical man. You don't like doing that, but you did a really good job, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you too, darling.
Excellent. I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you. So now we're going to have a talk with my 15-year-old son, my youngest son, Sam, and he has, not even reluctantly, but I think he's always been interested in being on the podcast and talking about his experience. You talked about it when you're a lot younger. You did, don't look at me like that.
Did I?
So welcome, Sam.
Hi.
Sam, I feel like you and your brother have always known about my adoption and explorations because it's always been all around you. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I would definitely say. Wait, re-ask it. I'm messed up. Like I've had a brain fart.
You don't swear.
Oh, sorry. Did I swear?
Yeah, you said fart.
Oh God,
Okay.
that's tragic. Can't have the listeners hearing that one.
So, would it be accurate to say you've always known about? Do you remember not knowing about me being adopted?
No, I've always kind of known. It's just I remember like being in primary school, hearing about it. You'd say it or mention it, but it was never until maybe I was a little bit older till I like understood it. Obviously, like hearing about it when I'm in prep, I'm like 4 years old. I don't necessarily understand what it is. I just knew that you were adopted. And then it wasn't only till I was like 10 where I started getting the concept of it, and then only till now where I started understanding the impacts of it and really what it means and everything.
So can you share with everyone what you know about the biological side of my and therefore your family and what relationship you have with them?
Well, I don't really have much of a relationship with your biological side, my biological side. I've never really gotten to know them very well, especially my grandfather and my grandmother. I've never really met them properly besides my grandfather. And it's been a few years since I've seen him. But I feel like that's one of the impacts that adoption has on me, because I've never really, I haven't really felt a super strong connection with them, and I don't really know how they are, and it kind of leaves a bit of I can't think. It leaves a bit of like a gap in my knowledge. Like, I don't really know how I am. No, that's hard to...
No, I understand what you're saying.
It's like, I don't really feel like I'm like anyone on your side of the family. And then, because I don't know them, I don't know if it's kind of coming from that. It just feels like I'm a bit different. And I can see that how that's like a thing from adoption.
It's interesting for me because I do know a little bit more about them, and I do see elements of you in them sometimes. Or I should say elements of them in you would be the better way to put it.
Yep.
So just to clarify, you would have been about 2 or 3, I think, when we met my father. And you've never actually met my mother. So I was pregnant with you the last time I saw her in the flesh, because she lives interstate and we haven't had a lot of contact over the years, just in and out. But I do think you might have spoken to her on the phone once.
Yeah, I think I said hi to her.
Yeah. So you were about, like I said, 2 or 3 when I reached out and met my father and started my research degree. So I was pretty full on into that while you were just a little tacker. But you've also seen me do a lot of other work and explorations into reunion and even my work at Jigsaw, I guess. How has it been for you watching me do all of that?
When I was younger, I never really noticed it. I just remember being like really young, 4 or 5, and then you'd be in your office doing work, just me being there, and then like it never really had an impact on me because I was never aware of kind of what was happening. And then until I'm older, obviously I can reflect on it now and see it. But then sometimes feel it hasn't really had a huge impact on me in my later years, because I mean it's kind of always just what's happened. And then I mean sometimes I can see how it can affect you, and then obviously that has a bit of a butterfly effect onto me, where however you feel may impact on how I feel. You know, if you've had a tough work week, obviously working in a space that has such an impact on you, I can see how that can affect you negatively sometimes, and that can have an effect on me. But besides that, I've never really had any problems with it or anything like that.
Okay. How do you think that and you may not have any thoughts about this, but until you're a lot older, but I'll ask you anyway. How do you think my experiences with adoption have shaped or influenced my relationship with you, or even our family dynamics?
It's a tough question because I'm still like very young, so maybe I haven't had the experience to see how it's happened. And obviously I know like quite a lot about your story and everything, but maybe I just haven't had the experience enough, or to see how it may have affected our relationship. But as a family, I don't know, I've never really noticed anything too different about us. We can be a little odd, but we're an odd bunch, but never really noticed anything super weird about our family dynamic that might be different to others.
I was telling Dad when I spoke to him, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I did my doctoral thesis, the whole point I did all of that study was actually for you and your brother, because I very much know that adoption has impacted the way I view the world and the way I interact with it. And it's my greatest fear, I guess, that I have had that influence me as a mother and has impacted you boys and potentially in negative ways. And so if that was the case and you ever had to figure out anything in your life that revolved around me, I kind of thought, well, I can leave you like a bit of a handbook to who I am and why I might be the way I am. And that's why I did all of that study, was kind of to figure myself out and maybe leave a trail for you as well. Yeah. So that's why I was up working so long on that.
Yeah.
So how has your understanding of adoption evolved as a result of witnessing my search and reunions?
I think it's definitely evolved a lot, especially since I was younger. Like, when I was younger, I kind of, like I said before, it's just you hear the word adoption, you don't really learn about it. Then you learn what adoption is, and then you kind of, now I'm getting to the age where I start seeing the impacts, and not only hearing about the impacts, like seeing them firsthand, and what they are, and how it's impacted you. And it's interesting, like, hearing about it, and how it's affected you, and, like, you can kind of see it in person now. And, like, it makes a lot more sense for some of the ways you, like, may act or, you know. But can you ask the question again? I've kind of lost my train of thought.
That's all right. I was just asking how your understanding of adoption has evolved since you've been watching me all these years.
Yeah, no, I feel like adoption is a very big thing. It's like a lot of trauma to it, a lot of, there's a lot of big things that go into it that may change a person. And it's definitely like my knowledge of the thing, it's definitely increased since I was younger. Maybe I'm getting to an age where I'm still not as knowledgeable as I could be. But yeah, it's a tough question. I'm not good at answering them.
That's all right. You're 15. You're a very age-appropriate answer. Look, I really appreciate you talking to me, Sam, and to our listeners, because all of us have other family members and friends who are impacted by adoption, and they're important conversations to have. So I really appreciate you talking to me.
No problem.
All right. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Adopt Perspective podcast. If you'd like to find out more, go to the podcast page on www.jigsawqueensland.com and you'll find a wealth of information and resources on the website. If you reside in Queensland, you can reach Jigsaw Queensland's Forced Adoption Support Service on toll-free 1800 210313, or you can call Jigsaw on 07 33 58 6666. If you live in another state of Australia, you can still call the Forced Adoption Support Service number, and your call will be answered by the Forced Adoption Support Service in the state that you're calling from. In every other state, Relationships Australia operates this service. A big thank you to Matt Sparrow for composing and recording our original theme music. Until next time, I'm Jo Sparrow saying farewell from Adopt Perspective, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption.